Special introduction. I don't have words to thank him, but let me start this session by congratulating Manas Shakti and Gajananji Kelkar for organizing such an excellent event with an extraordinary hospitality, I would say. We have heard quite a few speakers talking on the ancient wisdom on this subject. We had one full session on Upanishad and Garbhopanishad and so many things. And at the other end of the spectrum, we are scientists and doctors and practicing clinicians. So I'm going to attempt to bridge the two ends, ancient Indian wisdom and modern neurosciences as far as fetal communication is concerned. Shri, do I need to make this on? This is, yeah, fine. There are quite a few doctors here in the audience. Equally true is the fact that there are some non-doctors. So just 3 or 4 slides, I would recapitulate the neuroanatomy and neurophysiology at a very gross and crude level. Brain has 2 halves, right and left. The balance between the 2 halves is extremely essential, not only for the efficient function of the brain, but also for efficient communication from the brain to some other brain. I'll be coming to fetal communication a little while later. Brain has, every hemisphere has different components, like the frontal lobe, which is the seat of intelligence, the temporal lobe, which is the seat of memory, emotions, the parietal lobe, which is a seat of coordination, the occipital lobe, which is a seat of visual comprehension, and the cerebellum, which is a seat of maintaining balance between the two. These lobes function essentially in the form of electromagnetic waves. The neurophysiology is based on electromagnetic currents which pass from one neuron to the second neuron, from second neuron to the third neuron, and any act which is executed is through completion of a particular neuronal circuit, which essentially is composed of a series of sequentially placed neurons which start getting igniting one after the other. Now these neurons are connected to each other through junctions called synapses, and mind you, there are 100 trillion synapses in human brain, which are probably 1,000 times more than the number of stars in our galaxy. And these synapses run through various neurochemicals called neurotransmitters, which are extremely essential for us to understand the communication between any two brains. After having said this, brain functions in a very, very mysterious way. As we know that there are different organs in human body, and the structure of these organs is exactly same in every individual. Therefore, the function of each organ is also exactly same in every individual. The structure of eye is same, so everybody would see a particular picture in the exactly same way, same color. The structure of ear is same, so everybody would listen to a particular tune to the same amplitude, frequency and magnitude. But structure of brain is same. Everybody has a frontal lobe, a temporal lobe, or parietal lobe, and everything is same, but each brain functions in an entirely different way. That's why we have so many personalities. Even in one particular brain, you never know how that brain will function in what particular time. Many times we say that this fellow is not behaving properly, probably the mood is not good. So the same brain, same frame of reference and how it functions. So what is the mystery? See, this mystery is extremely essential for us to understand, because when we talk about communication, certain specific electromagnetic waves are generated into the brain for enabling the brain to understand a particular concept. Now, this communication is undergoing a lot of research, and new developments are occurring which are of extreme importance for us when we try to understand the communication between the brain, body and mind of the mother with the fetus, father with the fetus, and the environmental influences on the fetal brain of so many other modalities. Before the existence of mobile phone, we would have felt it's impossible that somebody is standing in the middle of the ground and is talking to somebody in US or Europe. But that is very much possible now. So the point which I want to make is, few years ago, what used to be looked upon as impossible is now possible. And it is our understanding which has improved, enabling we to perceive that this is possible. Now, there are some prerequisites. It's not as simple as this. When we talk on a cell phone to a particular person, we need two things. The person at the other end must have a receptive antenna which will catch hold of only specific frequencies which are emitted by the person who is speaking. And the speaking person has to generate specific frequencies and they need to be transmitted. So transmission and reception are two essential modalities for any communication. And the same thing holds true for communication between two brains. One of the mysteries is, as I just told you, any thought process or any kind of execution from the brain involves ignition of a circuit which consists of neurons arranged in sequence. One ignition would itself stimulate the second one, second would stimulate the third one, and so on. But what is the stimulant for the first one? How the first neuron is ignited? In other words, how the thought arises and what are intuitions? These are one of the mysteries which are very soon going to be solved. Why am I very soon going to be solved? Because a lot of effort is happening in that direction in modern neurosciences. Charles Sherrington has published a book, Man on His Nature, which illustrates a lot of these mysteries. Charles Sherrington was invited way back in 1938 and 1939 for Gifford lecture series in Scotland. It's one of the most elite lecture series, and it's an honor to be a Gifford lecture invitee, like we talk about TED talks these days. And in 1940, Sherrington published the first edition of this book. The second edition was published in 1952 with a lot of advances, and Sherrington passed away in 1953. So about the communication, a lot has been written in this book, and I would request all of you to procure this book and read. Because see, in my talk, I'm going to highlight few points, but it's impossible virtually to illustrate all of them. Because the bridge between ancient sciences and modern neurosciences is pretty wide as well as pretty grey. So the idea is to focus on certain areas to the depth of which one can go on his own and explore and develop his or her own perception. Wilder Penfield was a famous neurosurgeon from Canada. He worked in Montreal, he worked in Ontario, and he tried to define objectively different areas of brain and tried to locate the function of each area. The area for speech, the area for listening, the area for visual apparatus, and so on and so forth. But as science advanced, we find that there is a lot of overlap between various areas, and these areas simply cannot be defined. And this is what made us do something called as awake neurosurgery. When we see the open brain, these areas are imperceptible from one another. And even functionally, as Penfield put it, the location of a particular area is very fluid and very flexible. Therefore, if we are doing a very delicate tumor stuck to a vital area of the brain, and if we assume that particular area would be here, then it's very likely that in a given individual, that area might be a little few centimeters here and there. Therefore, awake neurosurgery is done these days to enable us to find out exactly what area we are operating upon. We can keep chatting with the patient, ask him questions, ask him to move his upper limb, lower limb, and try to exactly locate the area with precision in that particular individual. Microneurosurgery has advanced a lot, and we are able to look at the brain with as high as 300% magnification. But as we magnify the brain, the mystery gets deeper and deeper instead of getting enlightened. See, when it comes to ancient sciences and modern sciences, one has to understand that as the modern sciences would gradually evolve, probably we would again complete the circle and go back to realize that the ancient sciences were really scientific. Because there are many things which are not yet understood in modern sciences, in modern neurosciences, in modern clinical medicine, in modern clinical sciences. Like we have something called as idiopathic medical disorders. Idios means one's own, and any pathology is suffering. So idiopathic is a disease without a known cause. This is after so much of an advancement in science. There are many illnesses like idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, focal segmental glomerulonecrosis, many patients of hypertension. A rheumatoid spectrum has a huge sub classifications, the etiology and pathology of which is yet not known. Similarly, there are many mysteries and many things as labeled as cryptogenic disorders. Cryptogenic is hidden reason. The modern science still do not know. We are talking in 21st century when we have lots of development in quantum mechanics and particle physics, mind you. Still, a lot of things are not known in medical sciences. There is cryptogenic cirrhosis, there is cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, and the list can go on and on and on. Now, there are certain set of disorders called birth abnormalities. What do you mean by birth abnormalities? Some abnormality which exists since birth. The way science looked at it in the early era was, in the early days of genetics, a full talk on genetics was just there. So I need not go into the details. But really, are the genes only responsible? Then came the idea that no, genes are not something the only etiopathogens factor for this. There could be something else. And then came into picture epigenetics. Eugenics, I hope many of you would know. Eugenics is a science where you try to design the baby with your own expected qualities by modifying or modulating the genes, but that has its own limitations, probably because there is something else which operates, and the dynamics between the genes and the epigenomics is also a mystery. Genetic engineering has its own limitation for the same reason, because many times we do not understand the reason behind particular things, the evidence of which exists by practical experience. And we have to believe at some stage that this thing exists. A small example is, have you seen a dog whistle? A dog whistle is used for training the dogs. And when the whistle is blown, only dogs, cats can hear the whistle, and we are not troubled. How does it happen? The whistle operates at ultrasonic frequency in the range of 25,000 hertz, and human ear is geared up to receive the frequencies between 20 and 20,000 hertz. So human ear doesn't hear the whistle, but the God understands. Even as simple as the growth of a tree, there is a complete Upanishad called Vrikshopanishad on this, that if you plant a tree in a particular soil, the growth is unpredictable, even if you water it, nourish it, nurture it. The same tree, if planted in different soil, has different result. Two different trees planted in the same soil would behave in a different way. So how the growth of the plant occurs, what is the dynamics between the soil, the water, the so-called Panchamahabhuta, and the growth of the Vriksha? I'm coming to fetus again. Growth of Vriksha, growth of fetus has a lot of things in common. So Vrikshopanishad illustrates that in great details. But we need to understand and believe that what we experience has to have some scientific basis, even if we have not proven it to present frame of reference of science. This is the point which I want to make. Another example is discovery of radio waves. We listen to radio, and radio waves were discovered at XYZ junction by Hertz. But before that, did they not exist? They did exist. Newton saw an apple falling down the tree and gravitational force was discovered. It was discovered. Did not the gravitation exist before? It existed. And Newton just discovered it. Same thing, the radio frequency waves did exist in the cosmos, and Hertz just discovered it at some period of time. Similarly, now the scientists have understood that there are lots of reasons for diseases and disorders in the adulthood which are rooted in the womb. The first paper by David Baker in 1998 talked about fetal malnutrition as a cause of cardiovascular disorders in adulthood. Many people feel that, I do not have heredity of cardiac disorders, and the guy dies of a sudden heart attack. What could be the reason? Could the reason be related to the fetal development? And David Baker's paper strongly says that. There are n number of factors, and as I said, fetal programming is a pretty complex idea which involves a dynamic equilibrium between various kind of things. It's just jumping. Another paper came up in 2003 which talks about details of fetal programming. What could be the scientific basis of all this? Fetal nutrition, malnourished fetus leading to various disorders in the adulthood is now very, very well established. The role of micronutrients, which was not known earlier, like deficiency of copper, deficiency of selenium, deficiency of magnesium, and so on and so forth, correlable to a particular disorder which comes up in the adulthood, is also very well established. But the epigenetic influences are not known, and the dynamics between the epigenetics and the genes is still mystery to be resolved. We know that the twins behave in different ways, in different environments with different epigenetic influences. It was just discussed in one of the talks before me, so I won't highlight that. The point which I want to make here is that we have to believe in what we experience, what we perceive, and we have to find out the scientific basis for it as the neurobiology and neurosciences advance. And unless physics, cell biology, neurophysiology, neurobiology, quantum mechanics, everything join hands, the answers might not be exactly found out in a crystal clear way. Till then, what is happening is people are sharing experiences and putting forth the questions for all of us to think as to what could be the rationale, what could be the scientific background, what could be the basis for this to happen. Gone are the days when people used to question mark the very existence of these facts, but these facts do exist. Boris Brott is a famous Canadian orchestra person, and in one of the interviews, he said that one of the most famous tunes which he played, he felt as if it was being dictated to him by somebody. He went on, and without turning the next pages, he could just got those notes. He quoted it in one of his radio interviews. The same was the experience by the famous piano player Arthur Rubinstein. Interestingly, similar experiences have been shared by the famous violinist Yehudi Menuhin. What is the meaning of all this? Could it be scientific? What basis could this have? What influences as far as the genetic platform and epigenetic platform is involved could be behind this? This is for us to now find out. But the process has already started. I am correlating the experiences with science now. The fetal reaction to recurrent maternal speech has been convincingly put forth by a paper in 1994 by Anthony De Casper. I won't go into the details of the paper because, as I said, in 45-minute span, I would like to highlight certain areas, and depending on individual interest, one can go into the depth of it. It's a very, very interesting paper which talks about different notes played to different groups of pregnant women and what were the effects on the fetus and how the behavior of fetus was affected. The point is, the fetus definitely responds to different kind of notes in a different way. That means the fetus is in a position to perceive different notes in a different way. Now, again, more experiences and scientific basis has been described by Dr. Alfred Tomatis in his very famous book, The Ear and the Voice. See, he talks about an interesting case in France of Leoril. Leoril was a child which was born in France, and the main complaint with which the parents took Leoril to Dr. Alfred Tomatis was he was not able to express himself properly, he was not able to speak properly. What could be the reason? To the best of everybody's surprise, including Professor Tomatis' surprise, he realized that the child could communicate well in English, though he had failed to communicate in French in France with parents talking French language at home. When it traced back to the pregnancy, it was realized that this Aurelia's mother used to work in a courier company where the communication used to be in English language. What does it mean? The perception at fetal level probably led to all this, and his inability to express in French language is explained on the platform of this. Now comes the fact to the mind that embryogenesis says that the fetal ear develops in 5th or 6th month. Then how could the fetus perceive sound signals before that? A probable postulate could be the skin of the face could have some kind of a sensor like organ of Corti in the ear before they develop, through which the fetus can be perceiving. A lot of work needs to be done in this particular area. What matters is conscious listening. Conscious listening is extremely important, not only in adulthood, but even in fetal age. If you focus on a particular thing, then your receptivity increases. This Professor Tomatis has constructed a very, very nice center in Cagnes-sur-Marne in French Riviera. What he has made is he has created a very special atmosphere to explore the fetal origin of the disorders which the children have in their early ages of life. He has created an egg-shaped kind of a tub where special kind of fluid is kept to create an atmosphere as if the child is in the womb. The density and everything would match the amniotic fluid, including the temperature. The child is given a nice oil massage and then is put in this kind of a shell-shaped tub. And the lights are, the blue lights or red lights. If the child is slow and needs some stimulation, then the red lights are made on. If the child is hyperactive, then blue lights are made on. I think I won't go into the depth of all this because the time is limited. Those who are interested can go through this very, very interesting book. But it has been documented that the fetal perception can be as early as 5th or 6th week. And it has been proven by electrophysiology during the fetal life. One interesting case I would quote from the experiences of Dr. Tomatis. Have you heard of torticollis? How many of you know torticollis? Yeah, torticollis is a spasmodic contraction of the sternocleidomastoid muscle which forcibly keeps the patient's neck like this. And when Tomatis explored through all these experiments, one interesting case was such that the child came up with the idea that during pregnancy, amniocentesis was done and the needle hit the shoulder and the fetus reflexly did like this, and then the spasmodic contraction continued. And then probably psychotherapy and so many other modalities can be offered to such patients. The idea is to do this. Now, this is the modern experience. Again, my topic is to correlate the science, modern experiences with ancient wisdom. We have Hasta Malak, very illustriously described in ancient Indian literature. Hasta is hand, Malak is Amla, that is Indian gooseberry. Hasta Malak was a Rishi who knew the whole wisdom as if he is watching to Indian gooseberry on his palm. And he was Shankaracharya's Shishya. And he was not able to speak anything. So as a dumb child, he was brought to Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya questioned him as to why are you not communicating with the others? Then he said, most of the communications are nonsense communications. So I will communicate with you. And then he started chanting verses and sort of communicated the real knowledge, which is there in Hastamalak Stotram, which one should read. Another very good example is Ashtavakra Gita. Rushi Ashtavakra why is he called Ashtavakra? Again I have to wait for this pause. Yeah. Rushi Ashtavakra, Ashta is 8 and Vakra is curved. So Ashtavakra Rushi had a body which was curved at 8 different places. And this Rushi had the wisdom in his fetal life. His father was Kahod Rushi and his mother was Sujata, who was the daughter of Aruni Rushi, who used to run the ashram. And he was so knowledgeable in his fetal life, then Kahod, his father, was chanting Vedic verses and he pointed out from the womb the mistakes which Kahod was making. Therefore, Kahod cursed him that you are pointing to my mistake from the fetal life. So, you would be curved at 8 places. That's why he was Ashtavakra, curved at 8 places. And the wisdom which he talked about is illustrated in Ashtavakra Gita. Not only in Indian ancient wisdom, but even at several places in the world, we have a famous Leto with Apollo and Artemis statues being kept in the room of pregnant women in ancient Greece. Hypnotomy is a science which is related to perception of touch, and that is practiced since years. Taigyo is practiced in Korea with similar, a lot can be talked on this, but I think we'll just touch this. And these represent Southeast Asia, Europe, US, South America, and of course India. The whole ancient wisdom is correlating with latest science, which still yet to explore a lot of things. Another very classical example is of Abhimanyu, but there was an entire lecture yesterday, so I would skip how Abhimanyu learned few things and what was the implication of that. The scientific basis, again coming to the scientific basis, is there is a concept called human echolation. See, if clicking noise is triggered, then those sound waves get reflected back to the person, and these reflected sound waves can help him guide his path to his target. Now, the interesting fact is the reception of the reflected sound waves occurs in visual cortex, not in the auditory cortex, which is the hearing area. So, if that is so, this paper from Daniel Pole talks in details about various modulations which happen at anatomical level, physiological level in the brain, which probably have a behavioral implication. And the root platform on which it operates probably is N-methyl D-aspartate receptors. This activity of the receptors, the concentration of the receptors, the development of the receptors all changes, and brain has a capacity to make these changes. And depending on the strength and activity of these NMDA receptors, probably the NR1 and NR2B gates on the cell wall of the neuronal cells open or close, and their differential opening and closing can affect the synaptic release of neurotransmitters and impliedly the synaptic function. And there could be many determinants to this, but this overlap of auditory cortex with visual cortex is another mystery which is fascinating. Another very important paper, Speech Perception of Human Fetuses by Kiselwansky in 2003. Let us not go into the details. The glottis moves when we talk. The glottography is graphical representation of movement of glottis. Many a times, even if you don't utter a word, you think something and there is movement of the glottis, even in adults. So, non-invasive fetal quasi-glottography has shown in some papers that the glottis moves, and that goes hand in hand with the emotions of the fetus. The point we want to make is the fetus feels, the fetus thinks, the fetus reacts very, very thoughtfully in response to a particular stimulus from the environment. And these crying cord prints can have different patterns, and this is a separate science by itself. So we have left behind this era where the fetal audition was debatable and was discussed whether it's a myth or reality. But now this paper in Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology in 2008 endorses it. Clement's paper in 1977 talks about the differential effects of various types of musics, like the response of the fetus to, say, Vivaldi and to rock music are different. De Casper has published his work on womb music in 1983. And the basis of all this is phenomenal neuro by itself. A lot needs to be explored in this field. The healing power of music. We all know, and several speakers have highlighted the healing power of music, but the scientific basis could be through dopaminergic manipulations. Oxytocin level is known to correlate with this, and stress and pregnancy, stress and fetal behavior, a lot has already been said. The scientific basis of how the brain changes itself, how the brain adapts itself to challenging situation has been described in great details by Professor Marzinik from the University of California at Los Angeles. And he talks about the various changes which take place in the fetal brain provided there is attention and experience. So 100% attention and 100% experience, when blend together, are capable enough to produce anatomical changes in the synapse, anatomical changes in the neurons, anatomical changes in the gates, anatomical changes in the receptors, which subsequently imply that new connections could be built up between various neurons. New synaptic communications can be established. New branching of a nerve cell can be initiated. And that's why he has written a book called Soft Wired. The brain is soft wired. You know, it's open for rewiring and rewiring. We can change not only our software but also our hardware by appropriate samskara. We have experienced those samskara in early childhood, in the formative ages, when our parents used to teach us holding our hand with a pencil in our hand. It involves a lot of complex processes which occur in the brain. You know, when you are being taught to write your first alphabet, you are holding the pen, so tactile input is going to the brain. Somebody is teaching you, so his voice is entering into brain. Your motor limb is also active because you have to write in a very particular disciplined way. Otherwise, the handwriting is wrong, isn't it? So that kind of a teaching we have experienced. Similar teaching, similar reception, similar perception, similar comprehension is very much possible in the fetal brain. Rather, the plasticity of fetal brain could be much more the plasticity of an adult developed brain. Another very nice paper by Schooling on cortical reorganization. Progesterone and many hormones also could have a big role in this cortical reorganization. As I told you, brain has lots of overlap, lots of fluidity over taking over the function of one part with the other. And we see so many patients of head injury with one part of the brain completely damaged. But to the best of everybody's surprise, the surrounding part of the brain can take over the function of this part. Not every person who has complete paralysis following an accidental injury remains paralyzed. There is a potential of surrounding brain to take over the function of this part. Epilepsy surgery has advanced a lot, and we are doing something called as hemicraniectomy. Means half of the brain is removed, hemispherectomy. After removing entire half of brain, the other half has a lot of potential to take over quite a few functions of the half of brain which was removed. So plasticity is a huge field, cortical reorganization is a huge field, and I mean a series of lectures can be given on this. What is important is fetal receptivity. When we are engaged into various activities, I'm sure we remember teacher questioning us in the class whether you are attentive or not. Why? Because somebody is looking out of the window, somebody is looking to read books. In these days, somebody is looking at mobile phones and they are inattentive. But what would the poor fetus would do? He has nothing else to do but to be attentive. So don't you think that the highest attention of the fetus would make his brain maximally receptive? And this not only we are talking about, but the full attention and full concentration of the fetal brain has been described by the Indian text Jnaneshwari, which was written by Saint Jnaneshwar, who says, "Tari avadhana ekale dije, maga sarva sukhaje patra hoije, ugade aika." Means whatever you listen to with full concentration, your brain will adapt to it. This Jnaneshwar had told centuries ago. We all know the history of Shivaji Maharaj and the way Jizabai groomed Shivaji, not only in his early days, but even before he was born in the fetal life. She used to read inspiring stories. The whole atmosphere was that she was to brief her warriors, she was to take management meetings, and all those things trickle down. There is a book on Bhuvaneshwari Devi's biography. She was mother of Vivekananda, and it talks in great details about what happened during the pregnancy of Bhuvaneshwari Devi at the time of Vivekananda. Again, I don't have much time. I would scroll through this, but this is also a book which talks and endorses feto-maternal communication and our awareness about the same. I think now 5 minutes to go, so let me skip a few slides. There is a concept of mirror neurons. How many of you have heard of mirror neurons? Okay, few of you. See, like we see our face in the mirror. When I am trying to tell you something, a specific circuit in your brain gets activated, which exactly corresponds to a specific circuit in my brain. It's a mirror image. Then only you understand what I'm describing or what I'm talking about. So, the two brains, the brain of the speaker and the brain of the listener, get engaged into each other. This engagement has a lot of basis and a lot of implication also. This engagement probably is based upon the ancient Indian concept of Ekoham Bahusyam. That earlier Brahman was one and Brahman decided to be many. That one Brahman decided to be many. If one Brahman decides to be many, then everybody is a part of that one Brahman. So everybody is connected, built-in connected. So then the transfer of data between two devices which are connected by Bluetooth or whatever should be pretty easy, isn't it? Since we are already connected. And this is not a myth. I am not talking about the ancient Indian wisdom, but I am talking about the discovery of Higgs boson's particle, so-called God particles. Now, one of the most important attribute to Higgs bosons is that they probably connect everybody together. Every living world is connected together. This is what the current concept of Higgs bosons. In ancient Indian literature, a lot is said about Acharya Kanad. Kanad is Kand, particle. And in Acharya Kanad Muni Sukta and Sutra, a lot has been given about nuclear physics, particle physics, and quantum mechanics. There is a debate between physics, metaphysics, molecular neurobiology, cell biology, and all these things. But finally, everything is same. There is no difference. There is no point in technical fight between the two. There is a very interesting book called Code Name God, written by Mani Bhaumik. Anyone in the audience has read this? Only one or two. See, Mani Bhaumik was a Nobel laureate and he wrote a book on God. See, primarily, right in the beginning of the book, he says that this is a book written by a highly reputed scientist who has won a Nobel Prize. So obviously what I am writing is not nonsense. And he very illustriously describes what is the concept of God. Few people believe, few people don't believe what this whole thing is about. This Mani Bhaumik writes. Again, very little time to talk about all these things in detail. I would touch again to the contribution of David Frawley to all this. David Frawley has worked a lot on Vamdev Rishi Sukta. Vamdev Rishi has written fourth mandal of Rigveda, and Vamdev has been studied so much by David Frawley that David Frawley's another name is Vamadeva Shastri, and he is the only non-Indian given a Padma Shri by Government of India for his work on Vedas. A lot can be talked about his contribution and his views on exotic matter, dark matter, and so on. But let's skip that. Another one important point which I want to make before we conclude is what happened in the Starmus Science Festival 2011. Starmus Science Festival is a platform where scientists around the world gather together and they talk about basic sciences and advances in basic sciences. And the key is to correlate the two. And there the concept of quantum entanglement of particles has been put forth. The concept is every particle has got its pair somewhere. And these two pairs are exactly same. They are not only mirror image structurally functionally, but they vibrate also with the same frequency. Many times we talk about that I am quite pally with this person. His nature and my nature is same. So it's an engagement between the two particles, engagement between the two minds, and the same engagement if happens between the minds of the fetus and the mind of the mother or the mind of the father, then how easy or difficult would it be for the data transfer? And then I'm coming to Panchakosh. The concept of Panchakosh has to be emphasized here, that the feto-maternal communication is not only on a physical plane. We feel that, it's debatable the role of father, role of mother, role of other relatives on a growing fetus. But it's not only physical communication at the level of what is called as Annamaya Kosh, but deeper down there has to be a communication between the vital body of the mother, vital body of the father, and the vital body of the fetus, what is called as Pranamaya Kosh. Then there has to be a mental connectivity between the mental body or the so-called Manomaya Kosh of the fetus, Manomaya Kosh of the father, and Manomaya Kosh of the mother. Still higher is the supramental plane or the Vijnanamaya Kosh, and further higher is the bliss body or the Anandamaya Kosh. Again, a lot can be talked about this ancient wisdom of Panchakosha. There is a book called Panchakosha Viveka, which you can read if you are interested to know more details. Coming to modern science, Entangled Minds, beautiful book by Dean Radin, talks about the same thing. Engaged particles which vibrate together and can establish an excellent communication between the two. And there Dean has very categorically said that the idea of the universe as an interconnected whole is not new. For millennia, it's been one of the core assumptions of Indian philosophers way back, centuries behind. What is new is that the Western science is slowly beginning to realize that some elements of this ancient truth might be correct. So this is, earlier we knew everything from the days of sages. Then came the Western science and the Western philosophy, where a lot of things became unknown. And so-called modern science is trying to again know what is unknown today. So it's known, unknown, and again known, this cycle. Let's not go into the details of all this journey from known to unknown. One very interesting book which you should read is Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. A very well addressed book, very well appreciated book, and talks a lot about science and ancient Indian wisdom. In his paper published in the Journal of Psychophysiology, as recently as last year's May, Melnichuk has said that the yogi masters were right. The new research at the Global Brain Health Institute at Trinity College, Dublin. Again, a lot can be talked about this, but the point which I am trying to make is whatever was already being followed by ancient Indian culture, taking care of the daughter-in-law when she is pregnant, feeding her whatever she feels like eating, behavioral support to her, affectionate patting on her back by her husband, by her in-laws, would make huge amount of changes in her not only physical status, psychological status, emotional status, but overall well-being of not only that lady, but also the child in the womb. Probably they didn't know the so-called science behind it, but they knew at that time only what needs to be done. I think it is just 2-3 minutes to go, so I would skip this cytokinins and more about synaptic plasticity and stuff like that, and I would conclude in a couple of slides. The very good books which this is also another interesting book, Proof of Heaven, written by a neurosurgeon colleague of mine, Professor Eden Alexander, that talks about communication, and many important things. There are many papers which talk about emotions, hormones. There are many graphs. Chamberlain's monogram is well known, windows to the womb. See, selective transfer also can be focused onto. What I feel is there are certain things which happen in the parent's life, good or bad. The communication can be modulated or changed in such a way that only good things go to fetus and the bad things are filtered. And probably the time of your communication with fetus, and what is taught in the ancient Indian wisdom about the timings, Brahma Muhurta, Madhyana Muhurta is when the sun is at 12 o'clock on the top. Brahma Muhurta is something which is early morning. Sandhya is in the evening. And it has been shown that certain nadis are active at a certain particular point. So Sushumna nadi is active at Brahma Muhurta, Pingala nadi is active at Madhya Muhurta, and the Ida Nadi is active at Sandhya Muhurta. So certain things done at a particular time with a particular sequence has a particular meaning and has a different effect on fetus. So if one really takes this to heart, and we take these epigenetic modulation, do regular exercises, reading, thoughts, diet, and mind management, and so many things, then probably there would be a real harmony between the mother and the child. Real harmony between various organs of the child, various harmony between the different tissues within the organ of the developing fetus, and the harmony between various cells within a particular tissue of the developing fetus matters a lot. Savitri is a Mahakavya written by Sri Aurobindo, and it's a 1,000 pages book. There is another very good book by Sri Aurobindo on yoga of cell. He talks about intracellular harmony, how mRNA moves, how it reaches the ribosome, how the milieu interior of the cell is maintained, and a lot again can be spoken on this. But I would conclude with my last slide, little take-home message for everybody, that whatever we learn, whatever we discuss, whatever we teach must have a social implication, ethical implication, moral implication in a legal framework. Building the future is our goal. The goal is to strengthen the next generation and make a better world. Probably establishing parenting universities is already need of the hour. We have University of Mathematics, University of Science. So why not University of Parenting? Is it not important? It's extremely important. Probably the pediatricians who are around should, connect to this subject so much that when they revive the newly born babies, yesterday we heard the talk on how the baby must be feeling the moment the baby comes out. Lamaji also said the same thing in the morning, that if you have two different kinds of water, then what the fetus must be feeling, that feeling should be imbibed in the minds of pediatricians. Obstetricians also probably can communicate with the pregnant, not only with the pregnant women, but with the fetus. If they gently pat the fetus and say that you would do well, what would happen? Isn't it? Perspective to abortion, surrogate motherhood, again, huge topic. A talk can be given. As much as possible, cesarean sections need to be avoided to the best of his or her capacity, and fetus should not be deprived of the experiences of a normal birth, the vaginal massage which the fetus get while coming out, and so on and so forth. Neuropsychology of pregnancy also is a big topic. NICU admissions also, I feel that it should be a last message that communications with not only parents but those newly born neonates also can be done by neonatologists. And if we strengthen our communication between our brains, communication between mother to father, communication between mother and fetus, communication between father and fetus, that would establish a real harmony in the family, amongst the husband and wife, between the fetus and mother, fetus and father, fetus and parents. And these harmonious families probably would build harmonious societies. Harmonious societies would build harmonious nations. Harmonious nations would build harmonious world. And this should be the aim, and probably this should be the take-home message of this conference. Very well, wonderfully organized by Manashakti. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for the
Yes, and I say, sir, standing, correct, that's it. It deserves standing ovation. Excellent presentation. He has taken us to the Kailas Mansarovar of wisdom and knowledge and opened the different dimensions for us to think and act. With gratitude, may I request the Fafari sir to present a memento. Actually, this is a really, I'm touched, impressed, and the way, in fact, it is rightly said, एक अकेला थक जाएगा, साथी हाथ बढ़ाना. We'll all get united and the harmony will be established, and that beautiful day is not far off when all of us will work synergistically, synchronizing all our actions. Superb, fabulous, sir, superb, excellent. I didn't disturb you, but you really fixed, adhere to the time. That is another great thing. Sir has given a lot of, in fact, sir has shown so many books. Those who are interested, please go ahead. One more special announcement. As sir has rightly said about the parenting university, Manashakti has, Swami Vitnyanananda has also thought over it. As he said that there are some same frequency vibrates, entangled. So, and there is Palak Vishwavidyalaya was his concept, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me, people from Manashakti. Yes, that's what. So, we have another person who thinks at the same level. Perhaps the wavelength and this thing, vibrations are matching. Thank you, sir. Yes, okay. So nice of you.